Thanks so much for joining us, whether you're watching on TV or online. It's great to be with you. I'm Farah Nasser. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is set to provide his daily COVID-19 address from outside Rideau Cottage any moment now. We've already been given the 2-minute warning, so we're keeping a close eye on this story. We'll go there live as soon as he starts to speak. Now, while we wait for the Prime Minister, let's take a look at case counts like we normally do. Globally, 3.6 million people have contracted COVID-19. You're looking at the cases in Canada right now. More than 61,000 people have tested positive, and now close to 4,000 people have died in this country from COVID-19. Quebec and Ontario still account for more than 90% of those deaths. Here is how the numbers break down across our country specifically. If you look at Quebec, you see that more than half the country's cases are still there, with more than 30,000. Nunavut returns to having no cases of COVID-19 after their only suspected case turned out to be a false positive. And more good news, there are no new cases in several provinces. New Brunswick had no new cases for more than 2 weeks, has had no deaths and 0 active cases right now. And for the second day in a row, Ontario has reported less than 400 new cases. Our global national correspondents are standing by in Ottawa with the very latest on Canada's response to the pandemic. And we also have Crystal Gomansing, who is going to be joining us from the UK, because that country now has the highest death toll in Europe. We're about a few seconds away, Mike, but let's get you for about 10-15 seconds here. What are we expecting the Prime Minister to say?
Very quickly, on agriculture, the Prime Minister had announced some help for farmers to make sure that they could house and isolate the temporary foreign workers that have come into Canada to work on the farms. It's expected that we'll see more targeted help for farmers coming out today as the Prime Minister walks
Here
out
he
of
is.
his door.
Thanks, Mike.
Bonjour à tous. Hello, everyone. Before we get started, I want to note that today marks the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands. On this day, we remember the Canadians and Newfoundlanders who liberated the Netherlands from the tyranny of the Nazis. We also pay tribute to the deep bonds that were forged between Canada and the Netherlands. We honor the incredible courage and sacrifice of our veterans, in whom we are forever in their debt. Time and time again, Canadians step up in periods of crisis to help each other and to help our friends. We saw it 75 years ago on the battlefields of the Second World War, and we're seeing it once again during this pandemic. Ces jours-ci, tous ceux qui œuvrent dans le secteur de
These days, all people working in the food and agri-food sector work harder than ever to put their products on our shelves. And they want to feed us, but they have a difficult task given to the pandemic. And they should take additional measures to protect themselves, and they should respect and comply with physical distancing. And since restaurants and hotels are closed, a number of producers have excess production. And from the beginning, we said that we would be helping people who need a hand, and we're announcing a new investment of more than $252 million for the purpose of helping the agri-food sector through this crisis. From this amount, we will be allocating more than $77 million to food processors for the purpose of protecting the security and safety of their workers, and that will enable them to buy more personal protection equipment, comply with sanitary measures, and also implement additional measures of social distancing. And this will also enable these producers to adjust, to make adjustments to their factories in order to improve our production.
Food processors during this crisis. This is money that they can use to purchase personal protective equipment for workers, adapt to health protocols, and support other social distancing measures. It will also help expand or adapt our processing capacity to increase the amount of Canadian products we make domestically. In order
to help the pork and cattle producers, we are starting an initiative with $125 million to help producers to adjust to the changes in the marketplace. And so we are raising more hogs than we can then turn into pork production. So they will have to stay on the farm longer than planned, and this costs a lot of money. Today, we will help pork producers to adjust to the crisis and hog breeders.
We will launch a $125 million National Agri Recovery Initiative. Farms and processing plants are raising more animals than the system can process into things like steak and bacon because of COVID-19. For many farmers, this crisis means that they have to keep animals for longer periods of time, and that can be expensive. So with this funding, we're giving extra help to beef and pork producers so that they can adapt to this crisis. This is an investment, and if we need to add more, we will. As
to dairy producers, we intend to work with all parties in the House in order to improve by $200 million the credit line which has been distributed by the Canadian Milk Board, which is storing milk and cheese for some time. So we will be improving the credit line which is available to the Canadian Milk Board for the purpose of helping the farmers and producers to confront the crisis.
Too much of certain types of food, like milk, butter, and potatoes, is being produced. While some donations have been made to food banks, we don't have the capacity right now to redistribute such large quantities of food. And some producers have no choice but to throw out their product. It's a waste of food and a loss of revenue for the people who worked so hard to produce it. To avoid this, we're launching a surplus food purchase program, starting with a $50 million fund. The government will buy large quantities of certain products at risk of going waste, say, potatoes or poultry, and redistribute them to organizations addressing food insecurity. This will help ensure that our farmers are being compensated for their hard work and that our most vulnerable have access to fresh food during this crisis. Taken together, these measures represent a $252 million investment to support the people who keep our grocery stores stocked and our families fed. Je veux d'ailleurs prendre un moment pour souligner le travail de la ministre Bibeau.
I would like to congratulate Minister Bibeau.
We know that farmers still have concerns about what this pandemic means for their industry long term. Having enough workers for harvesting later in the season, having enough personal protective equipment for workers. These are valid concerns. And I can assure you that we are working with farmers, stakeholders, and provinces and territories to find lasting solutions. I want to close today by thanking every person who works in our food industry. People are spending a lot more time in the kitchen, cooking for an elderly neighbor, cooking for themselves, discovering new recipes, trying to make sourdough. These days especially, cooking and baking is about more than nourishment. It's also about relieving stress, finding a community, supporting each other, creating memories. You help make that possible. So we're here for all of you in the agri-food industry, and we will continue to be here for you. À tous ceux qui travaillent dans le domaine
to all those who work in the field in the agri-food sector, thank you for all that you do. We are with you, we have your backs, and we'll keep helping you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prime Minister. Phone questions first.
Thank you. Merci. Première question, Michel Lamarche.
Michel Lamarche, TVA Nouvelle. Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. You're thanking all producers and agri-food operators. However, people have asked you in this sector $2.6 billion in assistance, so that what you are offering is far from their request. What are you answering to them? Yes, this is a first effort that we're making at the moment, and we will increase that effort as the situation develops, and we will also continue our conversation with them and determine new needs if necessary. What have you, by way of statement regarding the health short-term predictions by Health Canada, which are quite different from the figures that we hear today? Why is Canada excessively optimistic in this? Well, we work on the basis of models which inform us as to how to get ready for what may happen. But we've never been predicting what would happen. This just gives us an approximation, a rough idea of what may happen and prepare ourselves. There has been a flattening of the curve. But as you say, and rightly so, there have other reasons for concern, and we'll keep adjusting our forecast and also try and act as efficiently as possible.
Modeling has always been there, not as a crystal ball to tell us what was going to happen, but to tell us the range of things that might happen, depending on our behaviors, depending on measures brought in. That's why we've been constantly updating it, constantly moving forward with new measures to try and make sure we're doing everything we can to keep Canadians safe, and we will continue to do just that.
Merci. Opérateur, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Stephanie Levitz, The Canadian Press. Line open.
Good morning, Prime Minister. When you briefed Canadians about the helicopter crash last week, did you know there were eyewitnesses, and why did it take 12 hours to confirm that the helicopter had crashed?
The military has very important protocols in place when there is a tragic incident like this around informing the next of kin, of talking to the families as quickly as possible before sharing information with the general public. All those protocols were followed.
Follow-up question?
Yeah, as a follow-up, in your remarks, you made a point of thanking Minister Bibeau with regards to her work on agriculture. There's been a lot of frustration coming out of that community that the relatively delayed response to their demands as it compares to, let's say, more urban concerns is a direct reflection of the lack of support for your government in the prairie provinces. Can you address that?
We move forward initially with supports for workers in all industries across the country. With the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, with the wage subsidy, with measures to support small businesses. These are the kinds of things that have had an impact in urban and rural areas. Furthermore, we've continued to work with farmers and food producers right across the country to respond to their needs. We have a large and varied country in terms of the challenges being faced in different regions, and we've been very diligent about responding to agricultural industry right across the country, including with a significant announcement today that's going to help people right across the country.
Thank you. Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Steve Shear, Reuters. Line open.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for taking my question. The Canadian Federation of Agriculture had asked for support for all farmers. The announcement today seems to be targeted to specific sectors. What do you say to producers in the vegetable industry or the grain industry that are also facing serious cash crunches right now?
Every step of the way in this crisis, we've been responding in targeted ways to the industries that need our support in as rapid a fashion as we can. The first things we did was put out broad-based support to workers in industries right across the country that could continue to pay their rent, pay their groceries as quickly as possible with the CERB, with now the wage subsidy, with other measures to support small businesses, and we're continuing to do just that. There are certain sectors that are more pressing in their needs for supports. But like I said, this is only an initial amount of support. We will continue to work with farmers, with stakeholders and industry representatives, with provinces and territories to ensure that our food capacity in this country and those people who work so incredibly hard every single day to feed Canadians get the support that they need through this crisis and beyond.
As a follow-up?
And you say this is an initial amount of funding, but the initial ask from the Canadian Federation of Agriculture was $2.6 billion. Spring season is starting now, so do you have a timeline for when the additional funding that you're saying could come is going to show up?
We're responding to pressing needs in terms of processors, in terms of predictability and support for farmers and for producers. We know that there is more to do, and we will keep working with them to determine exactly how we can best help. We will be there for our agricultural producers because they are so important to all Canadians. The hard work they do and the support they give us all needs to be respected, reflected on, and mostly supported.
Merci. Opérateur, dernière question.
Last question.
Merci. Prochaine question, Louis-Samuel Perron, La Presse.
Final Béron, La Presse. Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. Numerous fruit and vegetables producers are registering heavy losses because of disruption on foreign markets. Will you help them? Let me emphasize that we received 90% of the foreign temporary workers that we normally have come to the country, and we are also aware of the fact that we will need more foreign temporary workers, and we are in conversation with the industry to provide an answer to those requirements. Follow up. The meatpacking industry and meatpacking facilities are important places for the spread of COVID-19. So will you help this situation? Yes, we have announced various sources of funding for the slaughterhouses, and we are aware of the fact that it is important to protect their workers and also to have hygiene, to guarantee hygiene for the food chain.
They're big multinational organizations, so why is it up to the federal government to make sure that they keep their workers safe?
We are, of course, supporting the provinces on their initiatives to keep their workers safe. This is something that the federal government is happy to help with. Indeed, the responsibility is shared from the owners and operators of the plants to the provincial government, but the federal government is happy to be part of creating solutions in this situation where we're in an unprecedented crisis. We need to keep people safe, but we also need to ensure a supply of food for Canadians.
And a lot of the workers that work in these plants, they're not just working in cramped conditions, they're living in cramped conditions. So is there any of this money or is there anything more the government can do to help them so that they're not just keep them from spreading COVID-19 at the workplace, but also at home?
Part of the money that we're sending to help this industry and these areas is to look at the different ways they can keep their employees and these workers safe. These are things that the provinces will have to look at very closely, but the federal government, as always, will be there to support and to make sure that Canadians' food supply is safe while we keep people safe from COVID-19.
Obviously, it will be a shared responsibility between the owners, operators of these meatpacking plants and also the provincial authorities, which has the closest control of what is taking place on the ground. So the federal government will bring about the necessary additional help because it is our responsibility to guarantee the safety of the food chain and also to guarantee the safety of workers and Canadians in general against the spread of COVID-19. Radio Canada. Can you tell us when the various operators in the agri-food industry will be actually receiving the money? And I'm in particular thinking about the dairy producers. First of all, I'd like to emphasize that Minister Bibeau has been working very hard on those various issues, and she will be, in a few minutes' time, providing more details during her own press conference regarding the dairy producers. We will be increasing their line of credit. This is a request that has been pending for some time, but we will have to adopt a bill for that purpose in the House, and therefore work with all parties represented in the House. One of the possible impacts of the crisis could be the cost of the food basket in Canada, which may take place over the next weeks or months. Are you planning something for that purpose? Is there anything that the federal government can do for the purpose of helping the families which might, for whom it might be difficult to cover such costs? Answer from the beginning. We are helping Canadians either through the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit or the wage subsidy, among others. So we will always be responding to the requirements of Canadians and trying to meet them. We want to keep them healthy, and from the beginning of the crisis, the government has been and it will be with you in the future.
Do you have any idea how much food Canadian farmers were forced to throw out? And is this announcement too late when we think of what's already been lost?
We know we're in an unprecedented crisis, and we've had to respond very, very quickly. Unfortunately, there have been a number of farmers who've had to dispose of surplus production. But at the same time, this is a new program we're bringing in around surplus food that will invest $50 million in buying much of that surplus and ensuring that it doesn't go to waste. It goes to communities and families who actually need support in terms of food security. It is not a perfect situation by any stretch, but we are doing what we can to try and make sure that people are rewarded for their hard work and that others aren't going hungry. Okay. Depuis le début, on essaie de...
Since the beginning of the crisis, we've been trying to respond to this unprecedented crisis, and we see that some agri-food producers have had to throw out their production. We do not like this to happen, and this is why we are now investing $15 million for the purpose of buying back the production of those agri-food operators and helping the people who need food throughout the country.
Top 5 food exporters in the world. How bad is our backlog to get food out to foreign markets right now? And what's the plan from the federal government to ensure that Canadian products get out there so farmers can plan accordingly?
We've seen significant disruptions in global supply chains. We are working very hard to continue to maintain supply chains to our major markets, particularly the United States, but also others around the world, because food security is a preoccupation for everyone, and Canada is an important part of the solution. We need to make sure we're doing the best we can. We also need to make sure that we have enough food for Canadians as well, but we are confident that our extraordinary, hardworking farmers and producers in the agricultural industry will be up to the task, and we will be there to support them every step of the way.
Prime Minister Janet Silver, Global News. Earlier you said that your government was working with farmers and stakeholders to find long-term solutions for labor shortages for fruit and vegetable producers. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on what options you are looking at to address those labor shortages.
We recognize that there is a need for extra help when it comes to harvesting fruits and vegetables in the coming months. And that's why Minister Bibeau, who will be at the press conference at noon, will be able to answer your questions on what exactly we're looking at in terms of ensuring that producers have the support they need.
And if I could switch gears a little bit, You're announcing money today for the agricultural sector. The airline industry is saying they will not be able to get through the financial challenges of COVID-19 without some sort of government assistance. And I'm wondering when there is an announcement expected on this and if it will come with any conditions.
First of all, I want to highlight how pleased we are that a number of airlines have taken on the wage subsidy, the ability to rehire hardworking Canadians who haven't been able to work because flights have been so massively reduced is a good thing for their families, good thing for their communities, and a good thing for the industry as well, to ensure that people who work in the airline industry will continue to be connected to those jobs that will come back once this pandemic is through. At the same time, as I said yesterday, we are looking at more specific sectoral supports for industries and areas that are particularly hard hit because of COVID-19. We think of the tourism sector, we think of the energy sector, we think of the airline industry. We are working very closely with experts and industry representatives to see what kind of support we can do to ensure that the systems and the economy that we had that was flourishing before this pandemic will continue to do well for all Canadians for the coming years. Nous sommes d'abord très contents que.
First of all, we are very happy to notice that the air transport sector has chosen to opt for the wage subsidy, which will enable them to keep their staff on the payroll once the crisis is over. However, at the same time, we do recognize that some industries will need more help, and we're working with experts and with the industry representatives in order to determine in which way we can best help them for the purpose of resuming the prosperous situation of our industry and perhaps improve the previous structures. Thank you. This ends the Prime Minister's press conference. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau speaking about help for the agri-foods industry. Several sectors have been asking for help. You heard a question about the airline industry, of course, the energy sector as well. But today it was all about agriculture. Let's bring in our correspondents from Ottawa, David Aiken and Mike LeCouture. David, the industry has asked for far more than this, $2.6 billion. 252 is a lot less. So where's the disconnect here? What exactly does this industry need right now?
Yeah, and so obviously there's going to be more questions for the Ag Minister, Marie-Claude Bibeau. She's going to give her press conference at about noon Eastern. But you're right, last night, in fact, the Industry Committee of the House of Commons, I listened to the testimony that the Canadian Federation of Agriculture gave, beef producers gave, and that's just not even 12 hours ago. And they were asking for $2.6 billion in immediate support right across the industry. And it's not just beef farmers. We've heard a lot about beef farmers, and they're definitely in some stress. We've got 100,000 head of cattle that should be at market right now that are still on farms because there's no processing capacity. Those cattle, the 100,000 head of cattle that are on farms, cost $400,000 a day just to feed. $400,000 a day. So one of the things that beef farmers and hog farmers have been asking for was something called a set-aside program. This is what the federal government did back in the early 2000s when we were hit with the mad cow crisis, the BSE crisis. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. Producers are paid to set aside part of their herd. They're going to maintain the herd, take care of the herd, feed the herd, and then move it into production more slowly. That was something that beef farmers were pressing the government for literally as late as last night. And really, it doesn't sound like that's part of today's plan. And then there's seafood producers. Remember, it's just agriculture, just not fruits, berries, veg, beef, and pork. We're a major seafood producer, and often our seafood harvesters are working in remote locations up and down our coasts. And they've been asking for personal protective equipment. Some of them have been asking, can we be placed right under the rank of, say, healthcare workers in terms of getting personal protective gear? No announcement today from the federal government on that.
Okay, David Aiken, thanks so much. And I know Michael Couture, we're running out of time, but I know you're going to have a lot more on globalnews.ca. Of course, this still needs legislation to go through, and we know that the Conservative leader wanted to see more and more bills not just passed quickly, but to go through a lot more scrutiny. So that'll happen with this one. Thanks so much to you both. We're just going to recap today's address. The Prime Minister announced more than $250 million for the agriculture sector. This funding is aimed at helping farmers and food processors. This falls short, though, of the $2.4 billion the Canadian Federation of Agriculture asked for. Trudeau also announced $50 million surplus for a surplus food purchasing program that will allow the government to buy large quantities of food at risk of going bad. And this will be redistributed to organizations addressing food insecurity, as we have a surplus right now. We have a lot more, again, on globalnews.ca or download our Global News TV app. Thanks for watching.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So we're first going to hear from Dr. Tam and Dr. New, and then we'll turn to Minister Bibeau. Doctors?
Good afternoon. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. As usual, I'll start with the latest numbers on COVID-19 in Canada. There are now 61,159 confirmed cases, including 3,915 deaths. To date, labs across Canada have tested over 940,000 people for COVID-19, with about 6% of these testing positive. As we are moving into social and economic recovery, I also like to tally the good news that currently over 26,000, or 43% of all confirmed cases in Canada, are now recovered from their illness, and we wish them all good health. Today is Stop Clean Your Hands Day, which takes place annually in conjunction with the World Health Organization's global campaign for Save Lives, Clean Your Hands. This day highlights the importance of proper hand hygiene as a basic but life-saving public health practice. Personal hygiene, of which hand hygiene is key, is an important component of human well-being practiced the world over. In fact, hand washing can actually mean the difference between life and death. An early account of its life-saving ability takes us back over 175 years ago to a 19th century maternity ward where new mothers were saved from deadly infections when physicians cleaned their hands before delivering mums of their babies. Later in the 20th century, Florence Nightingale showed how wounded soldiers were spared from deadly infections thanks to hand washing and other hygiene measures. It is hard to imagine that once upon a time the life-saving prevention power of hand washing was not known, especially considering its absolutely integral role in preventing the spread of infections today. So if I was to tell you that there was one super low-cost solution that could significantly reduce everyone's likelihood of catching a whole range of diseases, from stomach bugs to antibiotic-resistant infections and even droplet respiratory infections like COVID-19, would you pick a favorite tune and sing to yourself while you wash your hands for 20 seconds? Because that's all it takes. Hand washing is so important that I'm keeping it short and simple today. There's simply nothing like a splash of water, a bit of soap, and a 20-second scrub. Back of hands, front of hands, in between the fingers. Don't forget your thumbs and fingertips. Repeat often to beat back the bugs. It's a lifesaver. Thank you.
Bonjour. Comme d'habitude,
Hello. As usual, I will start with the latest numbers on COVID-19 in Canada. There are now 61,000 159 confirmed cases, including 3,915 deaths. To date, labs across Canada have tested over 940,000 people for COVID-19, with about 6% of these testing positive. As we are moving into social and economic recovery, I would like to tally the good news that currently over 26,000 of all confirmed COVID-19 cases in Canada are now recovered, or 43%, and we wish them all good health. Today is Stop Clean Your Hands Day. This takes place annually in conjunction with the World Health Organization's global campaign for Save Lives, Clean Your Hands. This day highlights the importance of proper hand hygiene. This is a basic but life-saving public health practice. Personal hygiene, of which hand hygiene is key, is an important component of human well-being practiced around the world. Hand washing can actually mean the difference between life and death. An early account of its life-saving ability takes us back over 175 years ago to a 19th century maternity ward. New mothers were saved from deadly infections when physicians cleaned their hands before delivering babies. In the 20th century, Florence Nightingale showed how wounded soldiers were spared from deadly infections thanks to hand washing and other hygiene measures. It is hard to imagine that once upon a time, the life-saving prevention power of hand washing was not known, especially considering its absolutely integral role in preventing the spread of infections today. If I were to tell you that there is a super low-cost solution that could significantly reduce everybody's likelihood of catching a whole range of diseases, from stomach bugs to antibiotic-resistant infections, and even droplet respiratory infections like COVID-19, would you pick a favorite tune and sing to yourself while you wash your hands for 20 seconds? That's all it takes. Hand washing is so important that I'm keeping it short and simple today. There is simply nothing like a splash of water, a bit of soap, and a 20-second scrub. Back of hands, front of hands, between the fingers. Don't forget your thumbs and fingertips. Repeat often to beat back the bugs. It's a lifesaver. Thank you.
Merci, Docteur. Madame Bibeau.
Thank you, Doctor. Madame Bibeau.
La pandémie de la COVID-19 a eu l'effet d'une
Hello,
onde de
everyone.
choc dans notre chaîne
The
d'approvisionnement
COVID-19 pandemic has acted like a shockwave in our food supply chain, from farms to grocery stores. I assure you that we are working very hard with our provincial, territorial, international partners, with representatives from the agricultural and agri-food sectors, to ensure that Canadians always have access to good, fresh, affordable food. Today, Prime Minister Trudeau announced another series of measures to allow our agricultural producers and food processors to continue their essential work, which is, or rather, and to save our family farms throughout the country.
Our investments today are related to the impacts on our farmers due to the reduction in food processing capacity, as well as the closure of many restaurants and food services. Before I proceed with the details of today's announcement, it is important to recall that the business risk management programs bring about $1.6 billion each year to support farmers facing different types of challenges. Avant de vous présenter les nouveaux investissements dédiés au secteur
Before presenting new investments earmarked for the agricultural and agri-food sectors, it is important to note that risk management programs represent every year approximately $1.6 billion of assistance to agricultural producers. These programs, which are cost-shared, need to be improved. That is why, with my provincial and territorial counterparts, we've started started to work on them, and we started that work last summer. In all cases, it's important for agricultural producers to take full advantage of existing programs. Other initiatives, such as those we are announcing today, will meet exceptional needs caused by the COVID-19 crisis. First of all, the Agri Stability Program was designed to limit revenue losses caused, for example, by a significant price decline, such as is the case for pork right now. All producers are strongly encouraged to join the program, and to improve it, we've made the following changes. The deadline for enrollment has been pushed back to July 3rd. To access more liquidity in certain provinces, it is possible to ask for a 75% advance payment, not just 50%, and to help them assess the support that they may be able to obtain, a calculator is now available online.
Agri stability covers revenue losses, such as the decline of hog prices. All farmers are strongly encouraged to enroll in the program, for which the application deadline has been extended until July 3rd. Where the provinces have enacted the changes, producers can now access 75% of their expected benefit, up from 50%. And to help them estimate the level of support they can get from this program, a calculator is now available online. Agri recovery covers extraordinary costs faced by producers due to disaster. A province or territory must make a request to the federal government for the program to be activated, and the eligible costs are then shared 60% by the federal government and 40% by the provincial government. It normally covers up to 70% of eligible expenses. We are now making it up to 90%. Due to the unprecedented crisis and the meat processing backlog caused by temporary closures or slowdowns of plants, the federal government will make available its 60% contribution in all provinces or territories, whether the province contribute their share or not. Two of our main announcements today fall under the Agri Recovery Program. First, up to $50 million will serve as a set-aside program to help cattle producers cover the extra costs of keeping their animals on the farms while they wait longer to be processed. And up to another $50 million will be allocated to help pork producers cover costs of managing their herd. Agri-Relance fonctionne sur une base régionale.
Agri-recovery operates on a regional basis. Given the exceptional situation we are all experiencing, the federal government is going to make available 60% of its contribution for two specific initiatives and will leave each province the discretion of whether or not to contribute. Up to $50 million will be used to help beef producers deal with additional costs caused by the fact that they need to keep their animals on the farm longer due to reduced processing capacity. Up to $50 million will be allocated to help pork producers cover additional costs associated with managing their animals. The Agri Protection Program covers risks associated with natural disasters. Given the current situation, we are asking provinces and territories to recognize, as we are ready to do, the labor shortage as an eligible risk. This decision would assure producers that possible revenue losses caused by a lack of access to labor will be taken into account by the program.
With adverse weather or crop conditions. Given the current situation, we are asking provinces and territories to include labor shortages as eligible under the program. This would help to ensure the income by producers because of an insufficient resource and into account the Agri programs. Agri allows producers to build a savings account through yearly contributions that are matched by governments $10,000 a year. Producers are able to draw on these accounts as they need them. Agri-investissement s'apparente à un compte
Agri Invest is like a savings account. Here, government contribute the same amount producers do, $10,000. Producers can then use these funds at their own discretion.
Food processors are vital to our food supply and our economy and jobs. Across Canada, meat processing plants have slowed down production or temporarily closed as a result of the impact of COVID-19. Other food processors are facing the same challenges. That's why today we are also announcing a new investment of $77.5 million in support of food processing. Funding will ensure we can expand our capacity for Canadian-made products by adapting, modernizing, and reopening plants that have closed or operate under capacity. The funds will also help food processors to implement measures to protect the safety of their workers so they can continue production during the COVID crisis. This program will be retroactive to March 25th. Nous allons aussi investir 65
We will also invest $77.5 million to food processing. Will allow increased production capacity by organizing and opening plants that have situations or closed. Funds to better purposes as well, and this program will be retroactive as of March 25th.
Our investments today are also addressing increasing production of food in Canada. Farmers, as potato, poultry, mushroom producers, are facing higher surpluses due to the closure of restaurants and the hospitality industry. Therefore, we will invest $1 million, first of its kind food surplus purchase program, to help with the purchase and distribution of surplus foods. Organizations such as banks who serve the vulnerable communities.
A new $50 million fund will be used to purchase food surpluses from potato, mushroom producers throughout the country. To manage dairy surpluses, we've proposed to increase the Canadian Dairy Commission's capacity by $2 million. This additional support will allow the Commission to increase its stock, butter, and cheese to avoid the dumping of excess milk caused by the closure of many restaurants and other institutions. Our government will work with opposition to make these legislative changes.
To help manage the dairy products, we are working to increase the borrowing capacity of the Canadian Dairy Commission by $200 million. This additional support allows the increase its purchase of dairy products, such as butter and cheese, to help producers to avoid dumping their milk. The government will work with opposition parties to achieve the legislative. These measures that we are announcing today build on the other initiatives we have put in place to help our farmers manage the impact of COVID-19. These include $50 million to ensure farmers can safely welcome temporary foreign workers and observe strict safety protocols, $20 million to bolster our Canadian infection services, $100 million to food banks, and $25 million through Nutrition North to ensure food security for Canada's most vulnerable, and $5 billion in lending capacity for Farm Credit Canada, which has already resulted in $3 billion in deferred loans for thousands of producers. And finally, $123 million in deferred loans on advance payment programs. I care deeply about the well-being of farmers and food production workers, and how stressful this period is. Their safety is paramount. As we move towards reducing parts of the economy, we must ensure measures are to protect our workers.
For weeks now, throughout the country, our agri producers are going to the fields to plant 10 seedlings, take care of our stock, and to look after our environment. Thanks to the grocery store shelves full of good food. Let's encourage them.
To ensure we continue to have our family table, they are providing our communities and our country an essential service during this critical time. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Minister. We will now take questions.
Turn to the room. One question.
Thank you. Ici, our first question. Première question nous vient de Hélène Bizetti avec. Please go ahead. It's now open.
Oui, bonjour, Madame Bibeau.
Yes, Madame Bibeau. I'd like more details about the $50 million food bank. And we're going to get, but how will the distribution work? Farmers are not distributed uniformly throughout. How are we going to transport them? There's fees associated. How is it going to work? Answer. The goal is to work specifically with food banks on one hand and with the representatives of industries most affected on the other. We're going to start with our 5 partners who are working with $100 million contribute funds to food banks, what their needs, what their capacity is, and by with different sectors to determine what needs are. You've given some examples for transportation, packaging. What are that's going to be in the next weeks in order to match needs or to match surplus and the capacity of food banks to absorb. Question. I'm at a distance. I don't see all the ministers present today. I don't know if Mr. Duclos or Ms. Freeland is there, but I was wondering if it would be possible to ask a question about the agreement concluded with the Wet'suwet'en. I'd like to know when the agreement will be made public, now that it has been approved, and the fact that elective chiefs have not approved it. Does that change anything about the government's plan? Answer. I'm the only minister present today. All of my colleagues are attending the virtual with the House of Commons sitting virtually. I'm accompanied by our public health specialists right now. I'm afraid I can't answer your question right now. Thank you, Minister. Operator, next question, please.
Merci. Our next question, notre prochaine question, is from Briar Stewart with CBC News. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Yes, hi. This question is for Dr. Tam. Dr. Tam, I'm wondering if Canadian hospitals are being encouraged to go and test early given grant COVID-19. I understand the WHO this as well.
I think part of our study of infections is do some of the sort of assays, and so you've heard immunologists will be looking at that, and a certain study on the Canada, and there's always a opportunity to back further. Did tests actually as discussed that something that on the primary
no, that's fine. Thank you.
Next, please.
Merci. Our next question, Michelle Lam, TVA Nouvelle. Please go ahead. Your line is now open.
Bonjour, Madame Bibeau.
Ms. What the Minister of Agriculture had asked, we're talking of $6. Listening to you today, it seems that we're far from the mark, even with measures that had been previously announced. Are you used to that $1 billion programs that are dedicated beef and pork producers who were part of the were hit by the COVID crisis, the closure or reduced operations in our processing plant. We're with them and we're introducing our results for the month of April are that but also achieve these amounts. When will they see that in their bank? Most every week, I can assure you that everyone is
international about counterparts about and culture
and the position and that will not pause the problem.
And under Agri recovery, general now the federal 60 is to fund under to the
to now whether there are some I think about those in terms of things slow and
now the big numbers that I'm now sort of now many label government or of work get
that report the will put him to kind of the each chanters some is set profits to put play so that have the as we because we can medium now many people are work in so definitely we can support farmers. We want to support them obviously, but we also want to see this food shelf.
So the 2 million the infection for 6 big there. They just phone need expert is would be 8. So consumers more what we know.
Well, large data apply to ability now in the sense I'm allowed to give the time do we reporting or bringing handing this piece of bring select gaps and but the man are in the
Thank you, Minister. So we are going to turn back to the phone for 3 additional questions. Operator, over to you.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, notre prochaine question is from Philippe Vincent Foisy avec Radio-Canada. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Oui, bonjour, Madame Bibeau.
Yes, hello, Madame Bibeau. I wanted to come back to the question raised by my colleague about assistance plans, in which farmers are asking for 10 times being offered. The UPA insists that's not enough, especially to face competitors in certain sectors. What would you say to these farmers? They're in the field and their calculations aren't necessarily accurate. They don't have the same ones as you. What do you say to them? Answer. We continue to work with them. It's important full coverage of existing programs. They get back on programs by saying that enough. We want to improve them. We want to fill the gaps. It's important to take advantage of what's already in place. We've announced additional programs today, especially for the meat sector. We're making adjustments and improvements to those programs. And the Minister said earlier today, we're ready to do more to help agricultural sector. We're going one step at a time. We understand how important this is. This is about food security. It's important to protect our family farms as well. And we're working with them to support them throughout the entire season. For the consumer, what do you believe the impact is? Will there be fewer Canadian products, products from Quebec, products will What will it cost consumers? More expensive over 5 months or 2 or 3 years? Answer. This is why we're deploying an assistance plan for the agricultural sector. We know how important it is to reassure our producers for them to go into the to plant everything they need to plant. We want to avoid a reduced variety of our products or price increases. That's what we're working on. Of course, we want to promote Canadian products as much as possible. Also, we need to make sure that our supply chain is not interrupted, and it is very integrated with that of the United States. We need to maintain this relationship with the and our other partners.
Thank you. Merci. Next question is from Samuel Perron avec La Presse. Please go ahead.
Oui, bonjour. Question peut-être à Dr. Nam ou le Dr.
For Dr. New or Dr. Tam. It's May 5th today. Last week, we had various scenarios for Today we reached 3,915 deaths, and the projection from last week was different. What's happening? Answer. With the modeling, it's not a crystal ball. It's a tool for planning purposes. We're looking at what's happening with estimates. I have before me a graph, and if we look, there's a 95% confidence interval. And today, the interval is around 95%. It's never a matter of having an exact number. There's always a range. We could also say that the data that we today is part of adjustments been made to various models in order to plan for the future. Every single day, we receive more data, and that allows us to better project what's going to happen next week in terms of the trajectory of the epidemic in the short term. Thank you. A question for Madame. First of all, detail. You said that 5% of workers in April who needed to be present are present. Mr. Trudeau was talking about 90%. There's also many fruit and vegetable producers who receive almost nothing now. What will you do concretely to help them? Answer. According to the last numbers, 11,200 foreign workers among 13,000 who were expected arrived in April. Fruit and vegetable producers, on the one hand, we are redoubling our in order to be able to acquire a maximum number of temporary foreign workers. And there's the Agri protection program, which is a harvest insurance program. It has been improved, or perhaps not improved, but we invite the provinces to ensure that they include as an eligible risk the lack of access to workers if there are losses in the fields because farmers don't have enough workers in the fall. Insurance program for those losses.
Ministre opérateur, prochaine question, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you. Merci. Our next question is from Stephanie Levitz with the Canadian Press. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Good afternoon. My question it is about $1 million buyback program. There's hundreds of millions of pounds of food sitting in Canadian warehouses. How will you decide where this money goes? Who will be able to benefit from it?
Well, we'll start the conversation with our main partners in the food bank category. So Food Banks Canada, Second Harvest, Salvation Army, the community organizations, and breakfast clubs. So the partners we are working with for the distribution of the $100 million subsidy, and to identify their needs. And also we will be working with the sectors that are most impacted by have the most surplus, like, for example, poultry, mushrooms, potatoes. And we'll try to figure, how we can meet the surpluses with capacity that the food banks can absorb, and what they need to be able to benefit from this food. So there might be issues around transportation, there might be issues around packaging, for example. So we will have this group working very quickly together so we can match apply with their capacity to distribute it through the network banks across the country.
Thank you. And my for Dr. Tam, the percentage of tests that are positive going up steadily over several weeks. This week appear to have gone down 7% last week, 6% yesterday, and 6% today. Is there any way from that for you, or for Canadians for that matter?
Well, I think as a standalone, it's a complicated interpretation, but I think overall, we're seeing a continual slowing down of the epidemic itself. And some of the percent positive might reflect that epidemiology. So what is that despite increase in the amount of testing, that percentage positive is coming down. And the origin of the slowing down into the also, of course, in testing means that you're probably testing more people who might actually not have the virus as you scope in more people. So it's a bit of a dynamic picture. But on the whole, this together the data rate is really down. I've been saying on average about 3% daily growth now compared to much higher before, as well as the doubling time really slow down as well. More of that points towards that this epidemic is slowing across Canada. But as I've said before, our number at the levels is a bit of a composite. So that percentage is variable in which province territory we're in. In some jurisdictions, is actually much lower than that.
Thank you. We'll turn back to the room for one last question. Olivia.
Good afternoon, Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News. I have one question for Tam and one for Bibo. I'll start with you, Dr. If that's okay. New York put out a health alert about Kawasaki disease in kids and possible links to COVID-19. Are you asking pediatricians in hospitals to watch out for Kawasaki disease in kids here? And can you also tell us how many cases there are in Canada and what to watch out for?
So yes, the pediatric network is very active in terms of monitoring any outcomes or clinical spectrum in children with COVID-19. And as with other countries, the cases are much milder and less severe in older ages. And there has been some cases of, I think, a variation of Kawasaki's disease, which is a sort of inflammatory response, which is seen with many different viruses. So it's not necessarily linked to COVID-19, but they're looking at those cases to see what kind of conclusions they can draw. But there is no firm conclusion at all about the Association of Canada. They are continuing to monitor and look at that condition. And but it is a condition. I think building upon our understanding of COVID-19 is that there seems to be a sort of inflammatory or infectious response associated with this illness. But I think Kawasaki's or most but many other viral illness or bacterial infection can also cause it.
And for Minister Bibo, the decision to bring NAFTA into effect first, the dairy sector is and will continue in the when will the compensation package be ready?
We look at NAFTA. We have to look at global for the country, and in terms of compensation, they have received their first direct payment either in December or January this year. We are really focusing on the support we have to provide, to counter the effect of COVID-19. But our commitment towards the dairy sector and the poultry and others as well is still very strong, and we'll be moving forward later on.
And this concludes the press conference.